Welcome to the Institute of Buddhist Studies 75th Anniversary Ritual of Gratitude and Promise. Today we bring together a range of images and chants in the spirit of welcoming Buddhists from various cultures, teachings, and practices. That is the strength of IBS. It is a gathering place where Buddhist scholars and practitioners from all traditions can gather to explore, research, and share our dynamic practice in this ever-changing universe. We invite you to join in chanting as you feel moved. Thank you.
Sambujo.
Three, refuge. Turn to the embodiment of wisdom and compassion for guidance. Turn to the source of wisdom and compassion for guidance. Turn to the community of wisdom and compassion for guidance. Namandas, namandas.
The four immeasurables. May all sentient beings here have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings not be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and anger.
The Bodhisattva vows, vowing to liberate all beings, however numberless, vowing to extinguish delusions, however inexhaustible, vowing to open Dharma gates, however boundless, vowing to actualize the awakened way, however unrealizable.
The IBS promise. Grateful for the Institute of Buddhist Studies benevolence and attuned to the spirit of compassion and wisdom that guides our journey. We solemnly promise to expand our awareness and deepen our insight so that we may serve the diverse needs of our world. Navigating our multifaceted world, we commit to spreading peace, understanding, and relief through skillful action, supportive community building, and the cultivation of loving kindness, embodying the principle that no one is free from suffering until all are free. Now we invite you to make offerings at the multi-Buddhist altar that my students in a ritual class last spring designed, as well as the promise. So please come up to the front and take a flower, and you can put the offering in front of Shakyamuni, in front of Prajnaparamita, the mother of all Buddhas, in front of the Vajrayana Tara Buddha, or in front of Kannon Guanyin. So please pick up a flower, try and be on the side of the aisle where your preferred Buddha is. Make your offering of the flower, just placing it directly on the table, and do a shoko offering as you return to your seat. And let our offering flow along like a river as the sound of the bell washes over us and carries our prayerful offerings out into the world.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to see everybody here today. Thank you to everyone who was involved in the planning and executing of this wonderful ritual service called the Ritual of Gratitude and Promise. It's very nice to see everyone coming together for such an auspicious occasion. There are simply too many thank yous to give, and so I'll defer to the names that are listed in here, including the list of names of those who have gone to the Pure Land. That being said, I do think it's most appropriate to recognize Dr. Paula Rai and her class for planning and executing today's event. I think their initiative serves as a great inspiration for us all. Thank you for the many efforts in making this a successful service. And many thanks also to Gassho for her undertaking of the video, which we'll also see, showcasing the history of the IBS. The people in the video, which you will see, I forget what part of the program it was supposed to come up, but it's supposed to come up at some point. But I think what they're telling us in this video that you'll see is, you now have the baton. It's now your turn. And so what are we going to do with this great responsibility, this great honor to uphold and share the Dharma for those around us and for the future to come? And that's what I hope that we can kind of think about today as the day transpires. There's more to come following this portion. Following this, there'll be a panel discussion featuring 6 individuals, both alumni and current students, who will talk about their studies and experiences here at IBS. We're very much looking forward to hearing their thoughts. And after that, there will be an Eitaikyo perpetual memorial service with our guest speaker, Reverend Kodo Umezu, who is an alumni of IBS and a longtime supporter of this institution. There will be a reception concluding today's events. And so thank you very much again to everyone for making today such a special occasion for us here at IBS. Namandos, 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 namandos.
Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Scott Mitchell. I'm the president of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. Thank you, Dean Miyagi, for those words of thank you. Those words of thank you. It's been a long day. I want to express my profound gratitude to everyone for joining us today on this most auspicious occasion. 75 years ago, a group of Nisei Buddhists who had recently been released from incarceration camps during World War II returned home to Berkeley, and they knew that they wanted to propagate the Dharma here in America. They wanted to make Buddhism available for Americans, and they knew that that required fortitude, courage, and above all, education. And so they met in the living room of Shinobu Matsuda, a member of the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, and they started what was called the BCA study group, a group of young people who wanted to establish and put the roots of Buddhism, put the roots of the Dharma deeply into American soil. And as Dean Miyagi said, we carry on that baton. Today, we have the luxury, the pleasure, the privilege of honoring our ancestors and carrying on that legacy. I'm particularly grateful to see the Odaiko, which is from the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, further connecting us to that community as well. As we continue on in our events today, I want to echo Dr. Miyagi's thoughts about carrying on the work of all the folks who've come before us, the incredible support and dedication to providing Buddhist education here in America. Thank you all for joining us today. At this time, I'd like to ask the chair of the Institute of Buddhist Studies Board of Trustees, Dr. Leroy Marishta, to offer his words of welcome.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome everybody. It's really good to see a lot of people here today. I want to thank you for being here, and those that are watching on YouTube also, to thank them for participating. We're really very excited about this day. I know there's been a lot of work that has gone into it, and it's a long time, 75 years. It's pretty great. So I want to thank you again for participating today and all the support that you've given to IBS over the years. It's been very, very valuable to us. It's helped us. It's encouraged everybody that's been involved with IBS through the years. Many of you have been deeply involved throughout our development and growth over the years. Maybe nobody since 49, maybe there are, I don't know. I'm not sure. Is there Sensei? No, I don't think so. No. But many of you have really given of your time, your efforts, your dedication, your devotion, and your financial support to make IBS what it is today. I wanted to really also thank the people that later I said, as was noted in the Eitai Kyo, will honor those who have come before us, who have been a big part of the development of IBS, who some of the founders and others who we are going to honor their memory and the support that they've given to us, because we didn't arrive here at this moment in time by ourselves and through our good work, which I think we do have done some good work, but it's a lot of other people that we stand on their shoulders and the work that they've done to get us to this point in time. I also want to give a very big thank you to Dr. Arai and all the other faculty and the students who have been involved in planning this, because planning an event like this is not easy. It is a task that you hope to do your very best, and you hope it all turns out right, but you don't know until it happens. And so it is happening, and it is going very well, I think. It is a very special day. 75 years of an institute such as ours to have survived. A lot of other places, seminaries and others are struggling to continue to exist across the religious spectrum, not just within Buddhism, but really across the spectrum. And so the fact that we have gotten here today is really quite amazing. And as Scott said, it really was the goal to really help to provide education and training programs, partly for the ministry, for the BCA, to get them ordained in Japan and come back and practice here in the United States. But we've evolved into really looking at the breadth of Buddhist disciplines across the spectrum, and really trying to do those types of things that really help to continue to educate people about Buddhism and across the United States and across the world. So we're very, very proud of that. Many attending IBS have become ordained ministers or chaplains or do scholarly work in Buddhist studies across the spectrum, and we really are very grateful for all the work that our alumni have done. We're really proud to be an accredited institution by the WASC Senior Colleges and University Commission, covers all the higher education, four-year education institutions in California and Hawaii and the Pacific. And we also are really proud when we became full-fledged members of the Graduate Theological Union. So through the encouragement and support of all of you here and all of you watching on YouTube, and countless others, as we have noted, we have come a long way, and we look forward to the next 75 years of our existence and growth and development. I don't think I'll be here then, but we'll hope for the very best. So again, thank you all for being here.
Is that on? Yeah. Thank you all for being patient with our technical complications. We will see if there's another time we can show the video. But for now, we will move on to our panel presentation of various IBS current students and alum. And I will introduce them just before they speak. The first speaker today will be an MDiv student, Victor Ogundipe, and his thesis topic or title is The Unfolding Dharma, Dharma Talking Other Power Through All of the Sutras. Thank you, Victor.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you today. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my thesis, a little bit about my experience at IBS and all of the people that really kind of allowed this to be possible, me being here. As Dr. Arai said, my thesis is entitled "The Unfolding Dharma: Dharma Talking Other Power Through All of Sutra." And the real focus there is this idea of, in Jodo Shinshu, one of the big distinguishing markers is this idea of tariki, this idea of other power. But one of my big interests is also the other Buddhist traditions. My introduction to Buddhism actually did not come through Jodo Shinshu. It was actually the Tibetan tradition. Also, I've had really unique experiences where I've been in places where there's been a lot of cross-pollination of the Dharma. One of the first sanghas that I was a part of is actually East Bay Meditation Center. And at East Bay, it is a really kind of amazing place because you have so many different streams of the Dharma. One thing that has really been exciting as of recently that I think is a part of my research, but is also just a part of what I try to do in action, is helping people who may not be familiar with Jodo Shinshu have the opportunity to actually learn and experience Jodo Shinshu. A lot of people ask me like, oh, okay, how did you come to Jodo Shinshu? And it was just kind of an amazing array of causes and conditions. But I think one of the things I'm interested in is making that easier, for other folks to be able to have access. So even to the point of really trying to work at IBS to kind of help professors or ministers, Jodo Shinshu ministers, be able to talk at East Bay Meditation Center and introduce many people to Jodo Shinshu for the first time. So again, my thesis is really looking throughout the tradition. One of the, just in class with Miyagi Sensei, I don't see where he is right now. Okay, yeah. But there's a quote from Nikkei Horin, which is a Jodo Shinshu scholar from centuries ago, but he talks about this idea of looking at the Buddhist canon through the lens of the three Pure Land Sutras. And so that's something that I'm very interested in. Just in class recently, we talked about this idea of, where can we see the tariki in other traditions as well? And so I think this is one thing, this kind of idea of deepening my understanding of the teachings of Shinran Shonin, but also fostering connections across traditions and being able to see, the other power of the tariki, the Jodo Shinshu influences there as well. I think maybe the last thing that I want to talk about, because a big thing for me is this idea of building bridges, is some of the things that excite me about being at IBS. One of the things I try to do is not only learn during my time here, but see ways that potentially as students that we can give back to IBS. And so one big thing I've been thinking about, in addition to kind of this interfaith interaction, is also interfaith interaction. I know there's a pretty long tradition of Christian and Buddhist interaction, but I'm really interested in seeing, whether we can extend that to other traditions as well. One person that actually helped me come to the Bay Area, because my family and I have only been here for about 2 months, it works at Zaytuna College. And so I think about opportunities there, right? Do we have opportunities for, an exchange? Another thing that's really been exciting me, I talked with Reverend Opal recently, and this idea of people who are turning away from faith. As we kind of talked about here, this is something that is happening in many different ways, across the country. And I think that there are many things in the Jodo Shinshu tradition that can make it an open door. So I had to, cite Reverend Opal here because I'm kind of riffing on some of the conversations that I've had with her, and, so give credit where it's due. And the last thing that I think is an amazing opportunity is actually the area of film. When I was 11, I saw the movie Kundun. I said my introduction was through the Tibetan tradition. I don't know if I would be here if I didn't see that film. I did not live in an area where there are lots of Buddhist temples. I did not know anybody that was Buddhist. My introduction came through film. one of the things I kind of hope for is that, maybe in time IBS could be a hub for Buddhist filmmakers. I think it's something that could be really helpful in terms of spreading our message. IBS is in California, which seems like maybe it's a good place if you want to do film. And then, of course, we just have this benefit of having so many different Buddhist traditions in the Bay. So I think that's something that is just an aspiration I'm throwing out there. And it's also one of those things I'm actively looking and seeing what can I do as a student, kind of, being connected to IBS to kind of help, leverage that student status and see if there are any ways that, I and some of my peers can maybe contribute to something like this being a possibility. So I could talk for a while, but I think that probably more. So.
Well, thank you, Victor, for that stimulating beginning. We have a film student who's on leave now, and another one joining who's a documentarian filmmaker. I'll hook you up.
Brent.
This is exciting. Wow, live development. So next I would like to introduce Amy Shoemaker, who is also an MDiv student, and the title of her thesis is Sharing Stories with Interbeing in Our Eyes, How Buddhist Tales Can Support Chaplains.
Thank you, Professor Arai. So I came to IBS about 2 years after beginning my career as an interfaith hospital chaplain. And so from the start, it was really important to me to have my thesis be a project that would engage the chaplain community. And this intention was deeply supported by all my professors, advisors, and peers throughout my time here. The Buddha's teachings have been invaluable tools in my own path towards liberation and have indeed provided a foundation for how I show up in my work as an interfaith chaplain. However, I would say that the Buddha himself is actually not a great model for a chaplain in my eyes. You see, chaplains are distinct from spiritual leaders like Dharma teachers, ministers, or priests, and preaching the Dharma is not at all my role. Particularly as an interfaith chaplain, my job is to walk alongside people in their suffering, utilizing their sources of strength to create just a little more spaciousness or freedom. In Buddhist narratives, the Buddha is known for pith instructions transmitted with authority and ultimate wisdom. For example, regain your presence of mind, he tells Padachara, jolting her out of maddened grief. A remark like that would not make for the best chaplaincy in the patient room, particularly coming from someone like me, kalpas away from awakening. But the beauty of narratives is that they contain multiple characters, different entry points, and ways of interpreting what's happening. In my thesis, I consider Buddhist narratives from multiple perspectives, including more minor characters, flawed individuals, people who undergo change. I also consider narrative strategies from Buddhist scholars like Charles Hallisey, Ann Hansen, Vanessa Sassone, Karen Darris, and countless others to practice refracting narratives through the lens of what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing. Take the tale of Kisa Gotami, for example, who in an attempt to revive her dead child goes door to door seeking a mustard seed from a household untouched by death. Through a creative reimagining of the gaps left untold in her story, like what do those interactions door to door actually look like? I see Kisa Gotami actually becoming an unwitting chaplain in training. And through analyzing her biography and the Pali vocality within her Therigatha poem, I argue that her path to awakening provides a model for how a recognition of interbeing can support a chaplain's work. So through addressing the theoretical framing along with 4 narrative case studies like Kisa Gotami's, my thesis aims to chart a path for utilizing Buddhist narratives to guide spiritual care providers and to help us approach our own narratives and our own lived experiences with interbeing in our eyes. The IBS community has been an incredible support in this work that I'm pursuing, from Thomas's ethics course on the Jataka tales to CJ's formation course and their emphasis on justice. And 2 people in particular, though, have been truly instrumental. We got them right here. Professors Paula Arai and Professor Nancy Lin. Professor Arai's 9 liberatory principles have been tremendous guiding ideas for me, from accounting for our interdependence to moving through an embodied perspective, from seeking compassionate interpretations of teachings and tales to imagining how a person wields liberating power in response to suffering. Further, Professor Arai's methods course in addition to her own work on creatively imagining through narrative, introduced me to literature and creative writing as valid and important academic methodologies that can help us better understand and apply Buddhist teachings. And maybe we'll add film to that too. Professor Lin has been the most attuned and brilliant advisor I could ask for. Not only did she notice and foster my interest in narratives, but she even shaped some of her curricula accordingly. And one of the benefits of the small class sizes here at IBS is that she was able to take all students' interests and focuses into consideration to craft a semester that allowed each one of us to delve deeper into our own research areas. Professor Lin also has an incredible ability to draw connections across areas of research and to tease out core questions from my flurry of ideas. Her patience and gentle persistence have been invaluable. Last but certainly not least, one of IBS's most powerful resources for me has been my peers, their curiosity, diversity, and insights, particularly like Letesa, the peers in my 2 Buddhist chaplaincy courses. It's these fingers that are currently typing my thesis, but the project is actually an expression of the ideas and wisdom of so many others in the IBS community. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So I'm just beaming with joy and pride. We've just heard from 2 people, and already the IBS educational efforts are just bearing such ripe fruit. Next, we have Letesa Eisler, who is also an MDiv candidate, and the title of her thesis is Exploring Tibetan Buddhism as a Catalyst for Transforming Trauma into Weathered Wisdom.
Thank you, Professor Arai. As you can see, I'm not exactly a young IBS student. I'm actually a retiree, and this is chaplaincy is a second career I'm exploring. And when I first started classes here at IBS, the goal was actually to get a nice little chaplaincy certificate that has now turned into an MDiv, that has now transitioned into getting IBS student. I'm actually a retiree, and this is chaplaincy is a second career. So, so much for retirement. But being here has been the biggest inspiration of my life. All of my professors have shaped me in a way that I never thought possible. The joy and camaraderie of this organization can really not be described. It's such a loving place. And when I talk to other students getting their MDivs at other name brand organizations, their experience is very different. And so I just want to, once again, just say how grateful I am for all of your investment in me. So with that, before I get teary, my topic for my thesis is actually focused on trauma. And I want to tell you a little story that really shaped why this thesis is important to me. So leaning forward in his hospital bed, my cousin asked his brother, "Remember when Mama beat us with an extension cord?" My other cousin said, "Yeah, I still have the marks," as he laughed. As they laughed and told this litany of horrish stories, just horrible, I really tried to breathe and steady myself to conceal just how horrified I was. My cousin's head bobbed against the back of his hospital bed mattress, and his amputated nubs bounced slightly as he slapped the bed in boisterous laughter. He had lost both of his legs to diabetes-induced blood clots, the results of prolonged struggle with alcoholism, a battle that he shared with my aunt. The only real memory I have of my aunt is the anxiety that I felt as I watched her drunkenly fall backward down a small flight of stairs. Knowing the risk, I didn't really have a significant connection with this part of the family because my mother insulated us from that. 6 months after our visit, my cousin passed away at 57, actually 1 year younger than I am now. So the study on adverse childhood experiences, completed in 1997, suggests that my family is not unique. ACEs are potentially traumatic experiences or events that occur during childhood, usually before 17. And ACEs include violence, abuse, physical, sexual, or emotional, or mental illness or substance abuse of a caregiver. The study reveals that 64% of the study population, which would be 17,500 adults, had experienced at least one ACE during their childhood. And actually 1 out of 6 experienced 4 ACEs. ACEs have been linked to a variety of health issues, including heart disease, diabetes, cancer, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, and suicide. Children with 4 or more ACEs have a 10 to 12% greater chance of being an intravenous drug user or attempting suicide. All of my professors, Professor Arai, Professor Lin, all of the other professors that have contributed to my experience here and actually helped me to come to wanting to explore this topic. You've all been such a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Letesa. And now everyone else gets to see what treasures we have in our students. Now we'll move to the alum, and Professor Nancy Lin will introduce them.
Thank you, Paula. I'm humbled and grateful to share this stage with such dedicated, open-hearted, and brilliant students, and also our faculty and alumni. It's really a great honor and the opportunity of a lifetime to serve on the faculty here and to be part of this community. Thank you. We'll begin with Jamie Kimmel. Jamie graduated from IBS with a Master's of Divinity in 2017. His thesis was on Buddhist hospital chaplaincy at the end of life, U.S. healthcare and the challenge of interdependence. He's a board-certified chaplain and works as a staff chaplain at UCSF. We're grateful to Jamie for serving many people through the COVID pandemic and in many other challenging situations, and for graciously coming back to IBS to share his experiences at our events and in our classrooms. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Also an honor to share this panel with everybody here. I'm thinking about how receiving an education here has shaped my work and my life. I go back to 2012. I emailed Dajaku, I'm not sure he's here, but very grateful. And for a couple of years, we went back and forth through email until I finally decided to take the plunge and become a full-time student here. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life. I was at a crossroads and I had this sitting practice and a lot of energy to do something different than what I was doing before. And IBS provided that opportunity for me. Looking back on the 3 years that I was here full-time, I have nothing but gratitude to share, really. It was a breath of fresh air to think critically about Buddhist practice and scholarship, while at the same time being surrounded by such kindness from all sides, as other people have said. Faculty, staff, and very importantly, all the students that I shared all these classrooms with and all this time with. In this sense, I feel that the community here really did act as a gentle but firm holding ground where I really was able to grow, both intellectually and emotionally. So many colleagues of mine actually have gone here. Seems like everywhere I go, I meet somebody that passed through the IBS as a chaplain or became a chaplain. I grew up with no religion, and I became a Buddhist in my 20s. I was trying to make sense of a very difficult life experience. talk about Dr. Yamaoka. He asked us to write a spiritual autobiography, and I was over like 100 pages. I went into his office because he wasn't in class, and he's like, "I'm still reading your." So, I mean, what a man. But it taught me something so valuable, something that I keep with me constantly in my work, which is weaving the Dharma into the actual fabric of my own life experience, not just as an intellectual exercise, but something that is very real and speaks to me personally and through that experience. I realized that many difficulties in my life made me a human among humans before anything else, and that was very humbling. And I could still remember the fascination I had in Dr. Mitchell's class when reading that many of my assumptions about Buddhism were based upon a certain worldview that was very specific. You helped broaden my horizons. Also, Dr. Arai. Her book, Bringing Zen Home, is still integral to my practice as a chaplain. The women in her book who use creativity and inventiveness to create meaningful rituals for themselves and for others outside of the formal Buddhist institutions translates very well for a chaplain's work in the hospital. We're often asked to create spontaneous rituals on the spot and do all kinds of stuff like that. And so those women were an inspiration to me, so thank you. And Daijaku Kinst, Dr. Kinst, a person I knew I could trust to lean on and learn from as I navigated the rocky seas of my own emotions, thoughts as I moved forward in my learning and in my career. Also very good with the red pen. For my thesis. I needed that. My exploding thoughts everywhere. I needed some reining in, and you two were perfect for me. I hear her voice, actually, Dr. Kinst, in my head now, that I should take care of myself, and that I'm integral to the mandala of care, as she put it, as I also provide care for others. I carry some sadness about the fact I had to learn this the hard way and burn out. But also, it's been a valuable lesson in my education and formation here that's allowed me to remember that it's this very flaw that allows me to be embraced by the Dharma. To be compassionate towards myself for being a human. I learned this too from the Institute of Buddhist Studies. I can truly accept myself as a real flesh and blood human with faults and inconsistencies like anybody. I learned that even though the Dharma is always there for us, that we are always held by this, there are moments when it doesn't feel like that. I learned it's okay to want to help, and learn that there are limits into being able to do this, and what these limits are. And that is also these very things that enable me to relate to others, to offer some solace as a human among other humans, to be able to sit with people in the midst of great pain, difficulty, but also celebrate with them their joy and gratefulness for life. I couldn't think of a better education that I could have received to prepare me for what I do now as a board-certified chaplain. All I can really say is thank you, the deep bow, to everybody that has made this place possible. These 75 years, all these people, when I think about the immensity of that and the gift that's been given. It's the Dharma vein that runs through this place that I have so benefited from. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, for speaking to the immediacy and the depth of the Dharma and how that shows up in your life and in your work. Thank you. Our next speaker is Reverend Landon Yamaoka. Landon graduated from IBS with a Master of Divinity in 2023. His thesis was on hungry ghosts and addict behaviors, self-reflection through a Jodo Shinshu lens. He serves as a minister assistant at Southern Alameda County Buddhist Church and at Palo Alto Buddhist Temple. Landon, as many of you know, has been a beloved and indispensable presence here at IBS and the JSC, and so I can't imagine having this event without him. Welcome, Landon, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I need to practice talking today because I forgot to take out my new retainers. I'm also like severely dehydrated. you shouldn't eat at a new sushi restaurant several days before you have something really important, especially if you have IBS. Ironically, I have IBS. I go to IBS. So everyone thinks I'm a doctor, but I'm like, oh no, it's religion. And they're like, oh, we thought, I was like, no, but I know a lot about stomach problems. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, it would have been good to get sleep like the last 3 days. But anyway, so I also probably shouldn't be sitting up here because my plan was to not write a thesis. I also misunderstood this assignment, so I was going to talk about that a little bit, and I will end with some stuff on my thesis. So Yamaoka sensei asked me to come to school, and I had decided that was probably not a good idea, but to hear him ask made me reconsider it. I was impressed by how he baited me to come in. He said, oh, I've always wanted to know if you were related to me, and I was like, how are you the bishop if you don't know who you're related to? Inside thoughts. So then we, just introduce ourselves, and then he's like, so I've been meaning to ask if you would want to come to school. I could offer you a scholarship. And then I was like, oh, this is a really, really great man. That was smooth. That's how he got me in, and now I'm in the chair, and I do want to come. So that's how I got here, and also kind of how my thesis formed. So I wasn't planning to do chaplaincy at all. I was just going to focus on the doctrine because I'm the least academic person sitting up here. And so I did my story that Jamie was talking about, and it was hard to get through, but it was meaningful to have to do that kind of thing. If we're going to be priests or chaplains, at the time I thought maybe I'd only do ministry. And the last person that went in our class, well, I won't say what religion he was, but he was a different religion than us, but he had studied Buddhism. So I was very interested. Like, I get to learn from the mouth of someone who's pretty smart about X religion. And he came to class and said, so I've been approved by Yamaoka sensei to do my personal story using the 12-step program. And that was interesting because I had worked in drug recovery for kids in probation at a group home. And then I left, it got a little crazy, so I went to do some prevention services in San Francisco. And so it kind of planted a seed. Maybe you can bring more of your work experience to your ministry, which is also, I think, how I got into school, because I know my grades weren't good enough to come to a master's degree program. So I wanted to look at the evil person, which came up in my thesis. In Jodo Shinshu, there's an idea, if you're not familiar with the practitioner realizing through the working of the vow or Amida that we're a foolish person, and that gets talked semi-often in church. But then in the doctrine, there's also this idea of like our teacher Shinran Choning talking about the evil person. And how I read his writing is seeing him talking about himself as this really not good person, an imperfect person. And so I wanted to pull that, which was my original thought on a project, into something to do with drug recovery. So Daijaku Sensei told us in our advanced class, if you're not doing a thesis currently while you're taking this advanced course, please guess on what you might want to do for a thesis. So I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do a theoretical approach to where I see what I've learned working in a drug rehab and in a prevention service to where there's some overlap with specifically Jodo Shinshu. And so I did it. I faked my way through that because I was pretty sick that semester. And instead of dropping out, someone said, just write something and put it on paper, you'll probably get a C. So that's what I did. Except Daijaku Sensei pulled me aside and said, this is really nice. I can't force you to do anything. I'll grade you based on your presentation. I do need a paper turned in, but I don't care if you don't proofread it. Just cite everything so I can look up your resources and make sure that you did the research that you were supposed to be doing. And that's kind of where this idea grew from. So the plan was to do a thesis on theoretical approaches to all Buddhist traditions, as much as I could find, on how they approach looking at addiction and recovery programs, and then making a comparison to Jodo Shinshu, except the Harada Sensei asked if I would do something more like, there's a good word, practical. He asked if I would make it so it could be like given to other people potentially, like a program. Yeah. I'm gonna take some more of Tom's water. Sorry. So what I did was I looked at the main drug recovery programs that I could find. I actually attended one of someone from Berkeley. He's a Buddhist practitioner and he created a drug program. So I actually attended his monthly trainings and I was very open that I am not, I guess I should clarify this, I'm also not sober. Like, I partake on occasion. So it's ironic that you're writing about drug addiction. But I told the group I wanted to be open about it and said, if anyone here has a problem, just message the teacher directly and I'll drop out, keep the money as a donation. And they said, no, we'd like to hear what a seminary student's doing if they're looking to help people like us. So I basically just looked at multiple programs to see what I thought they did well, what perhaps from a Jodo Shinshu perspective, something could be done different or explained different or coming from a different doctrinal approach. Since Jodo Shinshu is really further away from a lot of these other Buddhist programs practices. And I'm not saying that like the Christian one's wrong or the Zen Buddhist one is wrong. I'm just saying that perhaps the hope was I could write a thesis, and thanks to a lot to Professor Tom, who proofread my paper, that maybe we could sit at the table. I don't think that I should run a drug program since I'm not sober and I don't have I've been trained in mental health, but I don't have a background, like a degree in it. But the hope would be that maybe we could give this to people who have a background specifically with like a PhD or master's in drug recovery or a thesis for like mental health stuff, and then incorporate a supplementary program. Because I think we all probably know someone who struggles with addiction. I do. I'm fortunate that I got to learn from here, and that Yamaoka sensei was just very kind with his paper and said, tend to write, there's not really any wrong way to write this, just be very truthful about your emotions. And then Daijaku sensei took that and said, I can't make you do it, but I would like to ask for this to be a thesis, not a project. And I know I had planned to do a project, so I didn't have to do something as academic. But that's where we're at now. I think if we looked, I use the Tani show, I don't know that everyone knows what that is, but like one of Shinran Shoning's students kind of took I'll call it a journal, it's not that, but he kind of journaled on interactions that the master did with other people, letters or in-person talks. And I thought that maybe I could find something close to what the 12-step programs or other Buddhist traditions 8-step programs say, and just it's not replacing language, but making it fit for someone. If they were like super doctrinally Jodo Shinshu, then maybe they would like this language over a different language, because I don't think any drug program we should say is better or worse than another. I think it's just what works for the targeted individual. And thanks to the staff here, I was nurtured because I didn't have a very strong academic background. And so that was kind of what I thought I was supposed to talk about, like community. So like actually Thomas and Jamie, when we would be at the dorms and I'd be outside having like an oxygen break, sometimes they would come out and talk to me, and they would ironically teach me about Jodo Shinshu through how they saw what they had been taught in our Shin classes, and then they would teach it to me, and I'd say, oh, this really makes sense. So how would I do this for my paper if it was going to go to a person who's like me, maybe not as academic in Jodo Shinshu or in school? And then kind of play the language down, not to water down the teachings, because that was a concern, but to make it like palatable for anyone to just hear it and be like, okay, I might buy into that a little bit. Because the concern is that if they're addicted to whatever it is, they probably are more like pushing away that I have an addiction versus like, oh, here's this nice fluffy Buddhist idea, but let them grow on it. And it's time to end. So thank you. And Professor Tom. No, sorry. Professor Lin, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping it real, Landon. Thank you for enlivening the Dharma and connecting it to real life and real problems.
Yeah.
We need that. The world needs that. That's a gift. Thank you. Our last speaker on this panel is Thomas Calobrisi. Thomas received his doctorate in religious studies from the Graduate Theological Union in 2021 and his master's degree from the Institute of Buddhist Studies in 2016. His research focuses on Buddhist modernism and Buddhism in America. We're fortunate that he's come back to us as a research fellow and instructor, and grateful that he served as our dorm manager from 2017 to 2018. Very important. Thank you, and welcome, Thomas.
Can you all hear me? Okay, good. As you can see, I don't have any written remarks.
So I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, so yeah, bear with us. Thank you so much for this, the opportunity to be here. 75 years is something incredible to celebrate. It's almost incomprehensible, the amount of effort, perseverance that so many people, countless hours have put into creating this institution and propelling it forward for others to be transformed by, as I was and as we all are, and as you are hopefully here today with us. As I look out, I feel like I'm like doing like a commencement speech. But I do see I see so many different people that were important to me over the last 10 years of my life when I began school and my master's program at IBS. I see mentors, Matsumoto Sensei, Scott. I see friends. I see the love of my life with her camera up. I see, fellow alums. It's just wonderful to be with you all again, especially after. For some of you, I haven't seen you in years. I haven't seen Jamie in a number of years due to the pandemic. But it's just great to be with you all again. And so I'll talk a little bit about. I won't talk so much about my research as I will talk about my experience here at IBS. I guess I'll start with how I kind of came here. I was interested in Zen as a teenager, kind of a white kid in the burbs who wanted to rebel against the man and growing up in Austin, Texas. I was really into like the beats, like Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg and Alan Watts. I read a lot of Watts and D.T. Suzuki. So I was like, I want to be a Zen master, which is, really ambitious. So the trouble was that I wasn't a very good meditator. I was really bad at it. And that was something of a stumbling block as I tried to develop my practice. But when I went into college, I was really interested in studying Japanese Buddhism. At first, I was learning Japanese and reading a lot of Dogen, the great medieval Zen master, right? And I loved his enigmatic and gnomic phrases and really tried to sink my teeth into him. But I kept coming across this other guy named Shinran, who some of you may have heard of. And especially in the contemporary Japanese philosophers, I was also reading like Nishida Kitaro, Tanabe Hajime, and also, Suzuki was also in that circle as well. I began to encounter Shinran, and I found his honesty, his relentless self-introspection really refreshing. There's a lot of great Buddhist masters in the tradition who, are seen as the height of virtue. They're called shonin. Even Shinran is called a shonin. But he certainly wouldn't have called himself a shonin. And I resonated with that as somebody who felt like, well, he had spent 20 years of full-time practice and he felt like he didn't really get anywhere. I put in a couple of years hard. Granted, I can't say that I put in quite the effort as he did, but I said, wow, here's somebody who's really honest with themselves about their own failings, but nevertheless found that there was a pathway forward for them, and that was Jodo Shinshu, right? So I was living in Texas at the time. As maybe some of the audience members here know, there's not a lot of Jodo Shinshu Dharma in Texas. So the way you get it is through the internet. You find out more through the internet. And while I was rummaging around through the internet, I found a podcast called The Dharma Realm that was hosted by these two people, Scott Mitchell and Harry Bridge. And I listened to it because it felt really inviting. There was these two kind of nerdy guys talking about and postmodern theory and Jodo Shinshu, and I was like, this is great. And I tried, who are these guys, right? One of them I found out is a professor at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. And I was like, maybe I should go there. I think initially I was interested maybe in
like doing ministry or chaplaincy, but as I got into the program, I think I found that scholarship was really my lane. I had an interest initially in Jodo Shinshu, studying Jodo Shinshu, but just like Jamie, I think taking Scott's course on Buddhism in the West was like a pivot point, transformational sort of thing for me. Because in that class, I began to learn about the kind of presentation of Buddhism that had been given to me through the beat writers, right? This depiction of Zen as irreverent, spontaneous, authentic, right? And rebellious against the man, right? I learned that this had its genesis in a particular time and place, that it wasn't quite what the tradition was throughout its historical iterations. Not, of course, to say that anything is wrong with it. If you like the beat stuff, love it. I'm not going to yuck your yum. But so learning about the ways that Buddhist ideas and practices and artifacts had been transformed and translated into modern culture was really fascinating to me. And ever since then, I've been on a research trajectory of understanding, really from the 19th century to the present, all the various ways that Buddhist ideas and practices have been transformed in their encounter with modernity. So far, what this is looking like is I've got a book under contract with the Institute of Buddhist Studies through their Contemporary Issues in Buddhist Studies series, it's tentatively titled, right? It's not out yet. I haven't talked to the editor about what the title really is, but it's going to be, I think I put it in there, is Think Most of Death, How the Buddha Became a Philosopher. So this one's focused more so on how do we refer to the Buddha as a philosopher? Why do we do so, and what does it mean to include him in the pantheon of philosophers within the Western framework? So it's kind of a post-colonial intervention into that particular part of kind of the Buddhist modernist world. I'm sorry, what? Time? Oh, I gotta wrap it up. Okay. I wish I could have said more. I love being dorm manager. That was so much fun. But thank you so much for letting me speak here.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, everyone on this panel for sharing your stories and your ideas and your work, and for reminding us what makes IBS so welcoming and also so unique. I think at this point we're going to move on to the next part of the program, so I'll invite Scott up to transition us over to the next part. Thank you so much, everyone.
We stay?
We're saying stay.
Stay?
Wait.
We'll get go back. I'll be back.
Oh, I see.
No.
We have to move it back.
Once again, thank Paula, Arai, and Nancy Lynn. Both Drs. Landon and Arai have only recently joined the IBS faculty, and I can't say enough how happy I am that they have both joined us for a number of reasons. Not only, as you've seen from some of their current students, the profound impact they're having on teaching here at IBS, but also their appreciation for this community and our long important history. On that note, a presence that's also been here in the room with us and mentioned a few times in the panel presentation is, of course, the Reverend Dr. Seigen Yamaoka, who we lost late last year. We wanted to spend a few minutes reflecting on the profound impact that Reverend Yamaoka had on our community. And I can't think of a better way to do that than to ask one of my mentors and my good friend, Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto, to come and say a few words on the Institute's behalf in honor of Reverend Yamaoka.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Mitchell, for giving me this opportunity to speak briefly about one of my favorite persons in the world. And I think for many of you, it's the same. Reverend Dr. Seigen Haruo Yamaoka was a true visionary. He was also a leader, a mentor, a teacher, and a Dharma friend to many people. Those of you here in the room, but so many others throughout his very impactful and dynamic life. I'm very humbled to be able to share some thoughts that I have about Reverend Dr. Yamaoka, and very humbled that I get to stand next to his photo. I first had the opportunity to meet Reverend Yamaoka in 1981, which was before many of you in this room were born. He had just become the bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, and he was on a tour to the Eastern District. I met him in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he came to visit us with a small Buddhist Sangha called the Twin Cities Buddhist Association. He was a great man, and he came to visit this small little local community, and we were all just humbled to have him, but also humbled at the fact that he spent the whole day with us. And he joined us for a service that evening, and he gave his Dharma talk, which many of you know, if you knew Yamaoka Sensei well, it was short and to the point. He basically said that if we allow it to, the Nembutsu can form the spiritual foundation of our lives each and every day. That was the first time I met Reverend Yamaoka, and I also am very grateful that he spent a lot of time with me, a newbie when it came to Buddhism. He spent a lot of time answering my questions, and as with Landon, directing me to IBS. The last time I had the opportunity to see Yamaoka Sensei was in November of 2023, right here. We had a very big event for the Dharma Forward campaign, and Yamaoka Sensei gave us the great honor of coming all the way up from Los Angeles to join us. And he was in great spirits that evening. I remember he was just so happy, and everyone was happy to see him. He looked well, and it just gave us, such joy to be with him. And I remember his message that evening was also short and to the point, that the Dharma is always moving forward. It never stops, that the truth and reality of the Buddhist teaching will always be real and always be impactful for us. That was the last time I saw him, and I think the last time many of us saw him, because he passed away shortly after that. But in between those two meetings, I had the opportunity to meet with Yamaoka Sensei probably hundreds of times, in various contexts and various situations and circumstances. And he did a few things in his life during that period of time. So I'd like to just relate, if I could, just a few of those things. So Yamaoka Sensei served at the Buddhist Church of Oakland from 1964, and he was at the Buddhist Church of Stockton starting in 1971, before becoming the bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America in 1981. During his 15-year term as bishop, he was instrumental in establishing the Campaign for Buddhism in America and the BCA Endowment Foundation. The Capital Campaign generated millions of dollars and established many of the professorial chair endowments at IBS, including the Tamai, Adatani, Otani, and other chairs. These endowments continue to provide a financial basis and foundation for IBS today. Also, during his tenure as bishop, Yamaoka Sensei fostered many important institutional connections. He received a D.Min degree from the Graduate Theological Union, the Pacific School of Religion, and so he knew the importance of interreligious dialogue. And so in 1981, he helped the IBS become an affiliate of the Graduate Theological Union. This affiliation gave IBS students access to the vast resources of the GTU, including the research libraries at the UC Berkeley, and provided us with an opportunity to strengthen our academic curriculum. We're very honored to have today with us, joining us, is President Uriah Kim and President James Brenahan, from both representing GTU. IBS also became affiliated with Ryukoku University in Kyoto, Japan at that time. Ryukoku is one of the oldest Buddhist universities in Japan. And as a result of this partnership, IBS was able to establish a student exchange program that allowed IBS students to study in Japan, and it allowed numerous scholars from Japan to take up residency here in Berkeley. After his 15-year term as bishop ended, I focus on 15 years. We have our present bishop here, and he's starting his 5th year, I think, so you have a ways to go. After his tenure ended, Yamaoka Sensei returned to the ministry at the Buddhist Church of Oakland, and he began to teach again at IBS. In 2002, he received the degree of Doctor of Letters, Bungaku Hakase, from Ryukoku University, the very first non-Japanese national to receive that degree. He was appointed to IBS's core faculty in 2009, and the next year he was appointed as His Eminence Kosho Otani Professor of Shin Buddhist Studies. In 2013, Yamaoka Sensei became the IBS Vice President of Development. And in that position, he continued to find great success in fundraising millions and millions upon dollars to support the IBS. He was a genius in many ways, not only in his teaching, in his ministry, his administration as bishop, and his friendship with many of you in this room, but he was a brilliant fundraiser. And so I think it goes without saying that without Yamaoka Sensei and his efforts, his dedication, his spiritual foundation that he provided to all of us, there would be no IBS as we know it today. And I would dare to say there would be no BCA, Buddhist Churches of America, as we know it today. So we all owe Yamaoka Sensei a great debt of gratitude. You know, I'm so humbled to be able to follow the presentation of all these brilliant students and alumni that we have. I think this would give him tremendous joy, because that's what he really cared about. He really cared about the ministry, and he cared about Buddhist education. He cared about the spiritual foundation of so many of our young people who would go out to become religious and spiritual leaders. And so to hear many of them talk about the impact that he had in their lives really, I think, reinforces the fact that Reverend Dr. Seigen Yamaoka, has had that impact in all of our lives. And so thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts about him. And I'd like to ask all of you to please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda.
Thank you, Reverend Matsumoto. That was moving. Thank you very much. I've been reflecting deeply in the last few days on just how profound it is for us to be celebrating 75 years. And one of my favorite Buddhist concepts of the causes and conditions that bring us here. And truly, if it were not for Reverend Yamaoka, I don't believe any of us would be here. And so we owe him our profound debt of gratitude. Good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for attending today's memorial or Eitaikyo service. For those who don't know, the program has the program outlined for the service that we're going to participate in now, as well as some of the readings for the service, and most importantly, the list of contributors to the IBS who have come before. The Eitaikyo service, or perpetual memorial service, traces its roots to Japanese Buddhism. It is a memorial service to pay tribute to our ancestors and predecessors, and is dedicated to all of those who lived and died as Buddhists in respect of their deep contribution to the growth of the Sangha. This service is an opportunity for us to express our gratitude to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Many of you may not know or be familiar with the Jodo Shinshu service, but rather than to see this as a Shinshu or sectarian service, we would like to invite you to feel welcomed and to understand that this place, the Institute of Buddhist Studies, provides us an opportunity to hear the Dharma, and it would not have been possible if it were not for the countless efforts of the people who came before us. They wanted each and every one of us to ultimately find a path to transcendence and to end the cycle of life and death and to reach the world of no suffering. Collectively, we come before the Buddha Amitabha to open our hearts to listen to the calling voice of absolute truth. But equally so, let this be an opportunity for you to find your peace in the path that you have chosen. Thank you for your participation today.
Candace Sensei and I will now proceed with reading the names of those who have contributed to the IBS. Reverend Jokai Abiko, Mrs. Alice Adachi, Mr. Ryuji Adachi, Mrs. Maruye Ando, Mr. Yoshio Ando, Reverend Teshi Aoyama, Mrs. Janet Arakawa, Dr. Kyoto Arakawa, Dr. George Aratani, Mrs. Sakae Aratani, Reverend Dr. Jokai Asai, Mrs. Margaret Blair, Dr. Alfred Bloom, Mr. Richard Bloomquist, Dr. Roger Corliss, Mr. Fusakichi Dairiki, Mrs. Hao Dairiki, Dr. Jane Dillenberger, Dr. John Dillenberger, Reverend John Doami, Dr. James Doi, Mrs. Marianne Dumont, Mrs. Kazuko Eidman, Reverend Philip Carl Eidman, Mr. Richard Endo, Mr. Jeffrey Follick, Reverend Doe Fuji, Reverend Ryuichi Fuji, Mr. Yoshito Fuji, Mrs. Emi Fujimoto, Mr. Morizo Fujimoto, Dr. Masakazu Jack Fujimoto, Reverend Hogen Fujimoto, Professor Ryugyo Fujimoto, Mr. Tom Fujimoto, Mrs. Mary Fujimoto, Reverend Kakumin Fujinaga, Mrs. Toshiko Fujinaga, Mr. Dick Fujioka, Mrs. Lily Fujioka, Reverend Masami Fujitani, Reverend Dr. Ryosetsu Fujiwara, Dr. Luis Gomez, Reverend Russell Hamada, Reverend Dr. Shinsho Hanayama, Mrs. Masako Hane, Dr. Satoshi Hane, Mr. Noboru Hanyu, Mrs. Yaeko Hanyu, Reverend Akira Hata, Reverend Masami Hayashi, Mr. Takeo Hirahara, Mrs. Kinuko Hirata, Reverend Satoshi Hirata, Dr. Clarence Hisatsune, Mrs. Kimi Hisatsune, Reverend Ejitsu Hojo, Mrs. Yumiko Hojo, Reverend Ryume Iguchi, Mrs. Janet Ikeda, Mr. Tom Ikeda, Mrs. Jane Imamura, Reverend Kammo Imamura, Reverend Dr. Hisao Inagaki, Mrs. Tomiko Ishikawa, Mr. Shintaro Ito, Mrs. Agnes Iwamoto, Mr. Rory Iwamoto, Reverend Jitsuen Kakehashi, Mr. Glenn Kameda, Mr. Hideo Kaneko, Mrs. Misao Kaneko, Mr. James Kanemoto, Mrs. Yasuko Kariya, Mr. Hiroshi Kashiwagi, Mr. Masashi Kawaguchi, Mrs. Mitsuko Kawaguchi, Reverend Dr. Leslie Kawamura, Mr. Albert Kosakura, Reverend Kenryo Kumata, Reverend Haruyoshi Kusada, Mrs. Lois Lancaster.
Reverend Kenju Masuyama, Reverend Ryugen Matsuda, Mrs. Shinobu Matsuura, Mr. Masami Maeda, Dr. J. McCullough, Mr. Eric Mitchell, Reverend Kyogo Miura, Reverend Kakue Miyaji, Reverend Dr. Mokusen Miyuki, Reverend Keisho Motoyama, Dr. Ryo Munekata, Reverend Toshio Murakami, Reverend Dr. Masatoshi Nakatomi, Mrs. Masumi Nagatomi, Mr. Ed Nakagawa, Reverend Ensei Nekoda, Dr. Toshihide Numata, Reverend Dr. Yehan Numata, Mr. Tetsuo Ochi, Mr. Hayaji Oda, Mrs. Taeko Oda, Mr. Sam Oda, Mr. Edwin Ogasawara, Mrs. Janet Ogasawara, Reverend Shobo Ohata, His Eminence Kosho Otani, Lady Yoshiko Otani, Reverend Shoujo Oi, Reverend Dr. Ryoji Oka, Mrs. Judy Okamoto, Mrs. Ayako Okamura, Mr. Raymond Okamura, Mrs. Rika Okuda, Mr. Yoshi Saburo Okuda, Mrs. Edith Oto, Mr. Robert Oto, Dr. Leo Pruden, Ms. Haruko Janet Sakamoto, Mrs. Misae Santo, Reverend Laverne Senyo Sasaki, Mr. Ben Sato, Mr. Carl Sato, Mrs. Susie Sato, Reverend Dr. Richard Shelhace, Reverend Dr. Takamaro Shigaraki, Bishop Endo Shiefuji, Reverend Remy Snow, Mr. Ralph Sugimoto Jr., Reverend Shigeki Sugiyama, Reverend Kakuye Tada, Dr. Kikuo Taira, Mrs. Toshie Takahashi, Mr. Wataru Takahashi, Mr. Katsumi Takashima, Mrs. Yoshiko Takashima, Mr. Hitoshi Takemori, Reverend Yoshitaka Tamai, Reverend Shunsho Terakawa, Reverend Kyoshiro Tokunaga, Mr. Hitoshi Tsufuda, Bishop Kendru Tsuji, Mrs. Kyoko Tsurusaki, Mr. Shigeru Tsurusaki, Mrs. Ruth Uchiumi, Mr. Sam Uchiumi, Reverend Dr. Yoshifumi Ueda, Mr. Glenn Umeda, Reverend Dr. Taitetsu Uno, Mr. George Ushijima, Mrs. Helen Ushijima, Mr. William Waki, Mr. Noboru Yamakoshi, Reverend Dr. Sagan Yamaoka, Mrs. Shigeko Yamaoka, Reverend Seishin Yamashita, Reverend Jim Yanagihara, Mr. Tom Yanagihara, Mr. Motomi Yokomizo, Mr. Eiichi Yoshida, Mrs. Miyoko Yuki, Mr. Takeo Yuki, and Mr. Thomas Yuki. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats.
Thank you, senseis. We'll now have sutra chanting, beginning with the Hyobakuman, followed by the Amida Kyo. The Amida Kyo is in the purple book that was passed out on page 103, if you want to keep up. And following that will be the reading of the three treasures. During the Amida Kyo, we'll also ask that everyone come up and offer incense and perform Oshogo. Thank you.
Dedication. Today, we are gathered together in the presence of Amida Tathagata, the embodiment of wisdom and compassion, to observe the IBS Eitaikyo service, also known as Perpetual Memorial Service, with the purpose of remembering our departed loved ones and affirming our aspiration to continue the legacy of their compassionate activity. The Institute of Buddhist Studies, in its time of 75 years, has gone through many trials and tribulations, but it has been able to endure, preserve, and thrive because of all its contributors who believed in the cause of spreading the Buddha Dharma, the Nimbus teaching in this country. In our gratitude to those who have gone before us, we realize that their spirit and wish are living in our lives here and now, as we open our hearts to hear the calling voice of absolute truth. May we acknowledge our wish to continue to uphold the sacred Buddha Dharma that we have received from the previous generations and pass this on to future generations endlessly. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda.
Shodo
し全如人門説阿弥陀文殊寺名号約一日約二日約三日約四日約五日約六日約七日一心不乱五人臨妙十字阿弥陀仏教書小中現在午前聖人修持神父天道即徳往生阿弥陀仏極楽国土シャリオンが現在公設四言百修上門税摂社応答恩願勝利国土シャリオンヨガ根者三段阿弥陀仏不可思議空徳統合薬阿宿美仏趣味創仏大趣味仏趣味公仏妙音仏妙税等公が社修正仏学王合国水工場絶相演武三千大戦世界戦場実言用途修正等身税小三不可思議空六一切小仏小五年用シャリオン南方世界宇日が東仏妙門公仏大円見仏趣味動物無料精進仏行税等教が社修小仏学王合国水工場絶相演武三千大戦世界戦場実言教等修正等身税小三不可思議空毒一切小仏小五年業シャリオン最王世界無料重仏無料創仏無料動物大公仏大名仏放送仏上皇仏行税等公が社修小仏学王合国水工場絶相天風三千大戦世界戦場実言尿等修正等身税小三不可思議空毒一切小仏小五年業シャリオン方向世界空縁見仏最小音仏南小仏日小仏妙妙仏尿税等合が社修小仏学王合国水工場絶相演武三千大戦世界戦場実言教等修正等身税小三不可思議空毒一切小仏小五年業シャリオン芸法世界空死死仏妙音仏妙公仏達摩仏報道仏地方仏行税等教が社修小仏学王合国水工場絶相演武三千大戦世界戦場実言尿等修正等身税小三不可思議空毒一切小仏小五年業シャリオン情報世界空本論仏宿法仏工場仏高校仏大円見仏雑式法系本心仏シャラ中央仏法系特仏権利祭儀仏尿趣味線仏尿税等合が社修小仏学王合国水工場絶相演武三千大戦世界戦場実言尿等修正等身税小三不可思議空毒一切小仏小五年業シャリ国工業医運河が工業医一切小仏小五年業シャリ音百全難し専用人門税小仏小説名休業名者税小全難し専用人会議一切小仏重小五年体徳風体天皇アロクスタラ三脈三号大税小シャリ音京都会都真珠が五九小仏小 戦者利欲逆に利北南東北南東北南翼小阿弥陀仏国者聖上人と海徳風大天道阿のなら三脈三宝大法医国土脈一生脈根性脈道小成功者利四小善男子善女人脈信者応答北願勝利国土者利四行が根者小三小文空化市議空独二小部と役小戦が空化市議空独二差前言者無理国の異人南帝武士寺の王者は国土皇族悪性皇族天族煩悩族修上族明族中徳阿六たら三脈三宝大一生修上先生一切聖剣南進司法者利用統治学校合力学生教師南寺徳阿六たら三脈三宝大一切聖剣聖師南進司法聖意人南部戦士教義者利用優勝美空一切聖剣天人が修羅法モル諸戦安美真珠さらに法
Please join me in the reading of the three treasures which can be found in your program. Three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One, now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb into ourselves the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we submerge in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandos, 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 namandos.
Thank you to all the ministers. It is with great pleasure that I get to introduce our Dharma speaker today. It is my great embarrassment that I didn't have time to print this up and have to read it off my phone. Myriads of kalpas, I've lost my vision. Our Dharma speaker today is a very good friend of the IBS, a fellow student, a fellow alum, Reverend Kodo Umezu. Reverend Umezu was originally from Oita, Japan, and he became a Kaikyoshi minister in 1980. He has served here in the United States at the Los Angeles Betsuin, the Oakland, Concord, and Berkeley Buddhist temples. He's also served as the executive assistant to the bishop. He was the director of the Center for Buddhist Education, and I think is again the director of Buddhist Education. And though he didn't serve quite as long as Reverend Yamaoka, he did serve as the bishop of BCA from 2012 to 2020. He has also been a featured guest speaker to the UN Council and has done a great many things to help propagate the Buddha Dharma throughout this country. Please welcome Reverend Bishop Umezu.
Namandam, 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 Namandam. Let me first moisten my mouth. Would you please join me in Gassho? The great practice is to say the name of the Tathagata of unhindered light. I like to repeat it. The great practice is to say the name of the Tathagata of unhindered light. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Good afternoon, everyone. So hard to follow these great speakers we had. I just came back from Japan day before yesterday, so I am still not here. I don't know why I accepted this. So the passage I just quoted is from Shinran Shonin's writing, Jodo Shinshu. The practice, the great practice, is not just the practice, the great practice is to say the name of Amida Tathagata. So, wow, what does that mean? Great practice, not just to Not just a practice, the great practice is to say the name, Tathagata of unhindered light. This is a word of Shinran Shonin. When I was in Japan, I spent 2 weeks in Japan. In Kyoto, I had a chance to walk around, small alley and small street, and looking around and so many temples. And one of the temples had a bulletin board, and there was some kind of Dharma message posted on the bulletin board. And this one caught my eyes. It says, in Japanese, okay? 心は見えない。心は見えない。心遣いは見える。Okay, now I need your help. Translate. Dr. Rai. You're nodding.
So you cannot see the heart, but you can see how the heart is activated.
Yes, she is today's speaker, okay? You cannot see what we have inside, right? But if whatever here comes out in action or something, now you could see it. So this is kind of related to Buddhism, or especially Jodo Shinshu teaching. When I say Jodo Shinshu, I don't mean Jodo Shinshu Honganji Ha, okay? Jodo Shinshu is the appreciation, Shinran Shonin's appreciation of the Dharma, Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching. Whether it's Zen or what, essence of Shakyamuni's teaching is here. The Buddha, when we say Buddha, where's Buddha? You think of just Shakyamuni Buddha or something else. Shakyamuni Buddha is a Buddha, historical Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago. Something made him Buddha. Something. That something is something that we cannot see. The something has to appear in this world as such, like Dharma, Sutra, teaching. So the Dharma or teaching that Shakyamuni Buddha shared, the essence of that is what? It's the deep desire to save all beings from this world of pain and suffering. Not just him being, okay, I'm fine, I don't care. Buddha's essence of Buddha, the heart of Buddha is to bring something to us so that we, all of us, can find something that he himself found. But it is the most difficult of the difficulties. Even Shakyamuni Buddha said, this is the most difficult, harder than bringing two massive mountains together. It's easier to bring mountains together than coming to this realization. And that's the thing that we are given, something so difficult, because our mind is the one that making our own world. We conclude everything here. World is this way. But there's a great world sustaining all beings and wishing all beings to be safe, free of suffering, and live happiness, a life of happiness. That desire, we need to see, we need to hear, we need to be touched, right? So, to me, IBS is a manifestation of Dharma. This is something, kokorozukai, something that we could see and touch and feel and learn the essence of Shakyamuni Buddha, Shinran Shonin's teaching. If we don't have anything, no teaching, no books, No way. But somehow, people in the past, in this country, we are talking about IBS now, 75 years ago, Shinobu Matsuura, Mrs. Shinobu Matsuura, whom I met once, I had something to ask her, and she gave me a great answer. I'm not going to talk about it now here, but I could see her desire is now here as this IBS. So IBS is not the building, okay? IBS is not the building or budget or faculties. IBS is the heart. IBS is Buddha. Desire to share the Dharma in this country. And we are recipient. We are receiving the great gift from people in the past. Matsumoto Sensei, he left because he doesn't want to listen to my Dharma message. He is a busy person. He reminded all the ministers one day, IBS, including IBS, BCA, Ministers Association, he said, our organization is the most important organization in this country. Our organization, IBS, is the most important institution in this country, or even in the world, because no other places you can hear Buddha's wish. You turn on the TV, they don't talk about Buddha. You go to school, they don't share Buddha Dharma. You go to community activities, nothing. We have this gift, IBS, BCA, temples, ministers, all these are here for us to listen to the voiceless voice coming from true and the real, caring, true caring. So while I was in Japan, I was there for Ryukoku University alumni meeting. I'm a big shot. Well, Dr. Scott Mitchell didn't mention, but I was a president of IBS. And also chancellor, huh? So anyway, just joking, but going to Kyoto, and I had the chance to attend the alumni event. And the Ryukoku University, the Alumni Association, they pick 3 people every year and honor them and give award, Ryukoku Award. One of them, I forgot his name, but point is, this person received the award, one of 3. He is a Japanese traditional musical instrument player. And, he spent hours, days, and years, practicing. He was recognized even by the government and the Ryukoku University, because he is a graduate of Ryukoku. Also wanted to, honor his achievement. But that type of a musician, people don't pay attention usually. Japanese traditional music instrument players, usually behind the scene. They're not supposed to be expressing themselves, They are supposed to make the main person shine. They are just background, so you don't pay attention to those people. You pay attention to whoever here dancing or, doing something. So he, in his speech, he gave a speech after he received the award. He said, "Thank you for shining light on person like me. I said, wow, 私みたいなものに光を当ててくださってありがとうございます。He was so happy and grateful that he was found. He was spotted and honored. Buddha's mind is especially for those who are not able to, perform all these rigorous, religious practices. The Buddha's mind is giving us the way to find the means to go from this world of suffering to the world of enlightenment. Shinran Shonin recognized the Buddha's wish appeared in this world as his name. Call my name, say my name. Just by saying my name, you or we or I can go from this world of suffering to the true and the real world of enlightenment. Why? Why just saying the name? Why just saying the name is the means to go from this point to the other point? That's where he had to find out from his master Honen Shonin. So Shinran Shonin wasn't just talking about Jodo Shinshu Honganji sect, okay? Shinran Shonin was talking about big picture for all beings. Each of us aimlessly, blindly running around and hurting and killing each other, harming each other. We live in this world of darkness, no light. I have no light. My wisdom is so small. My knowledge is nothing. Shinran Shonin was able to find out how he truly is by encountering this immeasurable light, the great wisdom. By putting himself in front of the great wisdom, compassionate light, he was able to accept, or he was able to find himself being accepted and understood. The light was light shine on him. Hey, I am within Buddha's mind and heart. Thank you. Namandab, namandab. This big realm, embracing, sustaining all forms of lives, wishing everyone to live one's life to its fullest. And three treasures we read often. Hard is it to be born into this human life. To be born in this world is almost like accident, almost like 1 out of zillion chance. We came into this world while we are living. How many of us have chance to hear something? 99.9999% of time, we are just looking around what to watch, what to do, what to eat. We have only slight space here, room. Hey, something is coming. Something is coming from someplace. Shinran Shonin said, if you hear something, spend some time. Find out what that is. If you miss this time, during this time of human life, when can you do that again? Almost zero. Shinran Shonin was able to find or encounter the heart of Buddha while he was living and he wanted to share his appreciation of Dharma with people throughout the world. After that, many people turned to, or before Shinran's time, of course, many people reciting Namu Amida Butsu, Shinran Shonin became another person to, draw more people to Nembutsu's teaching. And continuously, Yamaoka sensei and all this, Matsumoto sensei, he's still living, but those people have, put their effort and kept IBS going, keep the door open so that we can deepen our appreciation of the Dharma through different gates, Zen or Tibet, Jodo Shinshu, different gate, but we study under this big compassionate light. So I'd like to thank IBS, people in the past, present, and the future, and all the supporters. I'd like to really say thank you to them for establishing, keeping it up, and handing down to the next generation the most important treasure in the world, IBS. So please, I was so touched and moved by all the speakers this afternoon. If all these people in the past see today's event, they'll be so happy. And they are here. They are here. Okay? They are here. So I want you to see them. I want you to meet them. I want you to live your life together with these people in the past. And that's how we could say thank you to those people who founded IBS. By the way, I was born in 1950, so I'm almost the same age as IBS. So you could bow to me too. But anyway, we need to extend our, friendly arms around, and say thank you to people around us for being part of IBS. By the way, I like the invitation card you sent, whether far or near, the friend of IBS, please come and celebrate 75th anniversary. So please invite me to the centennial. Okay, thank you very much. Gassho, please. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you very much, Sensei, for that inspirational message. We would like to close with Ondok-san, but we don't have the music, so we gotta do this a cappella, okay? So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll go there, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nyonai dai no ondoku wa miyoko ni shite mo osubeshi shinshu chishiki no ondoku mo hone o kurakite mo shasubeshi. Namandas, 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 namandas. Very much.
Thank you, Reverend Umezu, for that wonderful Dharma message. talking about IBS and the past, present, and future. And I think that's a very important way to look at it. Thank you very much for that. And Reverend Miyagi, I didn't hear your voice singing along with us. You had the speaker here, so I thought we were going to be able to hear your voice. Thank you, too. So I want to give some words of appreciation and thank you to everybody, to Reverend Kodo Umezu, to the ministerial members of the trustees who participated in the Aitaikyo service, Reverend Dr. Takashi Miyagi for organizing the Aitaikyo service, Reverend Skuahara and Shibata, Dr. Paula Arai and her students for organizing the opening ritual, as well as Nancy Lin and the rest of the faculty here at IBS. Our students and our alumni panelists who were fantastic and really brought home the message about what we do here and how wonderful this place is to them and to everybody that's involved. Jennifer Yamaoka, hello to you. IBS, JSC, and BCA staff for organizing today's event and the reception, which will be following. And these people included Sayaka Inaishi, Karen Sugiyama, Geshin Greenwood, Gordon Yee, Michael Endo, Judy Kono, Pam Matsuoka, Bob Matsueda, Bishop Horada, and if I left anybody out, I'm sorry, I apologize. I do want to acknowledge, as the bishop did, Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto, and the years that he led this IBS as president. He did a fantastic job and led us through the accreditation process, as well as becoming a member of GTU. I thank Dr. Scott Mitchell for taking on the reins and continue it, and the work that you did in terms of the accreditation process as well. And I want to thank all of you. I mean, this long list of people that we thanked and we acknowledged here in the past who have passed, and it's amazing, you know, as the names are being read, I know a number of them I've interacted with in my life, and they helped to lead me to this point in time too. So I'm honored to be the chair of the Board of Trustees, and we, you know, thank you for all the support you've given. Those of you that, you know, budgets are hard, and so I'm going to do the advertisement pitch here. You know, our operating budget is heavily reliant upon donations and the endowments that we have established and the money that we get from those endowments. But we need to do more because our budget is a little bit lean. We actually have quite a good budget, but we get support from BCA yet. We get support via donations, but we would really help us a lot is either donations that are unrestricted that we can handle some of our operating income, or to fully endow all the named faculty chairs. The full endowment is $3 million. We have for our 8 named chairs, we have a little over $7 million in endowed funds. So we need still about 16.5 million or so of endowments to fully endow those. If we did that, if they were endowed, we would be generating another $800,000 a year more than we generate now, which would really help to keep IBS sustainable, financially sustainable, and very vital going into the future. So whatever you can do, or if you know others that would be willing to support, we would ask that support be continued. But I do thank you all who have supported so strongly the IBS. I do really want to acknowledge here at this point, I hope they don't get mad at me, but Larry and Vicky Yamaoka for your strong support to let us keep the Hay Street IBS dorm, to renovate it. They have donated, so we'll be able to renovate it. We hope that in the coming year, it'll become available again for students to stay there, for visitors to come and stay there, for us to be able to have a meeting place for our students where they can gather and talk, because that initially was the place of IBS's where all that occurred, all the studying, all the lessons occurred there at the Hay Street dorm. And so we are going to hopefully get everything through the Berkeley permitting process, right, Larry? In the next few months, and be able to start to do the renovation and hopefully complete that in the coming year. So again, thank you to everybody for being here. We greatly appreciate it. We really are honored that you did, but also, you know, all these people that we named today in the Eitakyo service, and all the people living. I mean, you all have made a big part of us to be where we are at this point in time. And again, yeah, I hope that you and I are both here, Reverend Umezu, for the 100th anniversary celebration. But you know, I'm a couple of years younger than you, but that isn't much. So anyway, thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Morishita. I knew when I became president that I would screw up something, and I'm so sorry that I screwed up the introduction for Reverend Umezu. You know, the fault, though, really is with Reverend Miyagi, who sent me your bio. So that might be in your performance review. It wasn't very Buddhist of me, was it? Anyway, I want to echo the words of appreciation that Dr. Morishita said, and I want to thank you all once more for attending today's event. We do have a wonderful reception coming up, so please stick around for that. There'll also be an opportunity for a photo. Hopefully we can all squeeze in somewhere on the staircase to commemorate today's historic event. Thank you all again, and I hope to see you at the reception shortly. We'll also have a toast. We'll all talk some more. But in the meantime, please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.